Get my gloves on. Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is my 10,000 kilometer review of my CBR500R, and I'm just gonna jump right into it. So, look at how this bike looks. It looks really nice. That's the first pro. The aesthetics of this bike are amazing. It's kind of like a mini Fireblade, as you can kind of see. I actually get mistaken a lot for a larger bike because it looks so good. That was the first pro. So the second pro of this bike is it's very linear power delivery. It's very predictable, and it has a lot of torque and power down low. You don't have to rev it a whole lot to get all that power and torque out. Let me just get through the speed bump. So for example, if I'm short shifting this thing, even in like 3000 RPM, if I roll on the throttle, I could overtake people very easily. I don't always have to downshift. And having all that torque down low makes this like a really good city bike because it's very convenient. It's very easy to access those bursts of power to get you out of trouble or to overtake people if you're like cruising at like legal speed limits. And speaking of shifting gears, third pro is the gearbox is very, very, very smooth. I don't have any issues with any false neutrals or anything like that. The clutch lever, the shifter, everything's very easy to operate and very predictable and smooth. Even clutchless shifting, as you might see from my other videos, very easy to do, and I've never had an issue with that at all. And outside of the gearbox and the transmission itself, which are excellent, everything about this bike just sort of screams like high quality. It doesn't really feel like a beginner bike a lot of the time because the components they use aren't really like low-end components at all, right? You have your TFT display here, you have dual brakes in the front, you have Showa suspension, which is I think is like a really good suspension from what I hear. I don't have too much experience with the suspension or things like that. Oh, look at that. It's crazy how you could just ride like 30 minutes outside of the main city area and you're just in like peaceful farmland, you know? Now, I took this bike on a lot of sort of long trips outside of the main city in like very, very rural areas, and what really surprised me was the gas mileage on it. I think I was getting, at my best, I was getting around 3.5, 3.6 liters per 100 kilometer. That's what we use here to keep track of gas mileage. I believe this would be the equivalent of like 65 to 70 miles per gallon for you American folks. So the gas mileage is actually pretty insane for this. That means like on a full tank it cost me maybe like 15 bucks Canadian. It can go like 350 kilometers to 400 kilometers, somewhere around that. And that's like pretty insane, right? Like 15, that's like better than a Prius, better than a hybrid car. I think this is the most fuel efficient vehicle I have ever owned. And speaking of overtaking, I could probably, yeah, it's fairly easy to do. Yeah, that's third gear, and I'm not particularly high in the RPM range. Now, is this bike perfect? No, it's not perfect. There are a few flaws, I think, and I'll sort of go over them. The one is, if you look at this rev limiter, it's quite low, right? Like, this really surprised me because I came from a Ninja 250 and then I had a CB500R, and both had higher red lines than this. I think the Ninja had something like 12,000 RPM redline, and the CB300 and my friend's old CBR300, I think it went to 10.5. This only goes to like 8.5, right? So if you like to rev out your bikes and sort of like go, especially how first gear is geared, is quite short. So you find yourself having to shift a lot when you don't really want to. Like you can't hold the gears for a lot longer like you would on a bike with a higher red line. And this is something I always found kind of weird about this. I feel like this engine it doesn't feel like it necessarily belongs to this bike. Like it fits the adventure bike and the cruiser Honda's like a bit more than it fits this. Now overall the bike is quite reliable. I haven't had many issues with it, which is a pro. But one con that I found with this bike is that when you ride it hard, it does actually burn like a little bit of oil. I did check the oil every like 3,000-4,000 kilometers. It did go down by like a little bit, right? Not a whole lot. I did have to fill up and top out the oil, which is not a big deal to me, but that is something that if you are buying this bike, you have to be aware of, right? Because you don't want to have your engine oil starve while you're in the middle of a long sort of tour or like road trip or anything like that. Another con is that this bike actually weighs like quite a lot. Like I think it's something like 425 pounds wet, which is quite high. Like I don't even think a lot of 600s weigh that, but that dog was freaking out. I don't even think a lot of 600s weigh like 425 pounds, right? And if you compare something like this to the Ninja 500, which I don't know what kind of like black magic sorcery Kawasaki's been up to, where that thing only weighs like 380 pounds or something like that, which to me is like absolutely insane. So the weight of the bike really does affect it when it comes to things like handling it in slow speed maneuvers or tackling the twisties and the mountain canyons. Like this bike can still do it. Like there's no issues doing it, but I can't help but feel like something like a Ninja 4 or 500 or a R3 or something like that would probably be a better choice if that's your primary mode of riding. And I guess another con to this bike, because this is a 2024, it's like a redesign from the last generation where you have like the new screen and everything. There aren't really a lot of guides on how to like do customizations on the bike or any kind of like maintenance. Like the fairing design is like fairly new, and I'm not like the most mechanically inclined person in the world. It actually took me some time to find out how to like take off all the fairings and do the oil change. It's not really that difficult. One thing that I found really annoying was that there's a part of the fairing that kind of covers the oil viewing hole. I don't know what it's called, but like it's actually kind of hard to check your oil level here because it's sort of covering it. You know, some bikes there's no bearing in that area, so you very easily look at your oil level to see if it's like too low or too high. This bike, and I think this is also the case with a lot of the other Honda CBRs, like the 650 or even the 600RR, it's kind of hard to like look for it, right? And if you look at something like the GSX-8R, like that peephole is just like, it's like fully visible on the outside, super easy. Here it's not as easy, but this is not really that big of a deal. It's kind of nitpicking at this point. And lastly, a pro and a con would be the ergonomics of this bike. I feel somewhat leaned forward a little bit, but not like really, right? And this is the case with some of the sort of earlier sport bike models, where they basically feel like naked bikes but with fairings, right? And now it's not as upright as a naked bike actually is, but it's not really like a 600 either, right? Like where the handlebars would be like here and like the foot pegs would be like all the way back. And I'm not saying it should be like that, but because of the ergonomics, you might be surprised at how it feels. You might be expecting a much more sporty ride than it is, and when you combine that with the engine being kind of plain and not the most exciting thing in the world, it does feel a little bit misleading when you look at Honda's marketing material regarding this bike. Like you think this would be like, you know, you could take it to the track and, you know, carve mountains and do that kind of thing. But and you can do that kind of stuff and it's fun and it works, but you know, this always felt to be more like a sport touring bike than an actual sport bike. And once you sort of realize that, I feel like you come into it with more reasonable expectations, versus if you were just, you know, looking at this bike on the Honda website and, you know, seeing all the sick fairings, the mini fireblade look, that kind of thing. But overall, you know, this bike is very solid. It does get shit on like quite a lot for people, especially like people in the US. But the price disparity between this and the Ninja aren't like super wide. You know, this does get like the dual front brakes and TFT as its as standard. And you know, this bike has the excuse of being like 12 years old at this point, like the platform itself, so there's that as well. As for my own personal plans with this channel, you know, I am thinking of trading this bike in for a proper 600cc Super Sport. There is a 03 ZX6R that I'm currently looking at. Really, really good condition, 4,300 kilometers, one owner. You know, but if that deal doesn't go through, I'll probably keep this bike. And you know, as for this channel, it's already October by the time I'm posting this. I don't know when I'm going to schedule the specific post, but it's already coming to the end of what I would consider to be fun riding season. So I'll probably stop with the riding in the next few weeks, and I'll switch to posting videos of car driving POVs of my BRZ, and it'll be pretty interesting. I hope you guys like it. You'll still see a few scheduled posts of mine sort of pop up in the next couple of weeks, because I tend to schedule out my posts. They're not in order, but you will probably, if I do get like a different bike, you guys definitely won't see it until like next year. And I guess I'd have to change my name if I move away from like the CBR platform. So I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.